Bretto, can you believe it? The Wellness Summit is almost here.
Oh, I'm so excited. I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, Bretto, it's been 2 long years since our last Wellness Summit, and if you're listening to this, folks, and don't have a ticket, then
What are you doing?
the Wellness Couch family of podcasters gather for 2 days in Melbourne on Saturday, August 25 and 26, featuring
The Queen of Nutrition, Cindy O'Meara.
the rock star of wellness, Dr. Damien Christoph,
Connect with your spirit and soul with Bali Bomb survivor Karen Smith.
self-care is on the menu with Kim Morrison.
Master the art of aging well with the one and only Marcus Pearce.
Oh, shucks, Bretto. What about how to recover from rock bottom with Dr. Brett Hill?
Master your stress with Dr. Maria Zushman.
Get empowered with Imogen Bailey.
Female health experts Dr. Andrea Huddleston and Ashley Bond.
Master your sleep with Audra Starkey.
The natural nutritionist Steph Lowe. Australian Idol winner Wes Carr.
Woohoo! And Quirky Cooking's Joe Witten and Fuad Kassab and a whole lot more.
Oh, what a lineup, MP. Seriously, why would you not be coming to the Wellness Summit?
Not to mention our world-class exhibition of Australia's most incredible sustainable wellness products and services.
MP, we've done the final layout. There are less than 100 spaces left.
And there's only a few discounted tickets available at thewellnesssummit.com.
Marcus, be there or be square. Zazen Alkaline Water presents the 2018 Wellness Summit, Saturday, August 25 and 26 at the Collingwood Town Hall.
Get in quick, folks. The final release of discounted tickets available at thewellnesssummit.com. See you there, Bretto.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Before we get started today, I'd love to introduce you to our new podcast sponsor, which is Fire Tonic. If you haven't heard of Fire Tonic before, it is a raw fermented apple cider vinegar that has a whole heap of other goodness in it, such as chilies, turmeric, garlic, horseradish, ginger, just to name a few. And it has this delicious, warming, spicy kind of aftertaste that just warms your stomach and your solar plexus and has you feeling amazing just by taking it. But aside from that, raw apple cider vinegar is immune boosting. It's antibacterial, antiviral. It will decongest whatever you are stuffed up in the head with. It's antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. It's also the best digestive booster. Apple cider vinegar is the same pH as our natural secretions and also stimulates those natural secretions. So if you're feeling a bit low in your digestive system, if you've got a bit of a sore throat or feel something coming on, it's great. I've used this before just to knock something on its head, like a sore throat or a virus that's gone through the rest of my family. And for me, I've just kept up with the Fire Tonic little shots, which I absolutely love anyway because I love a bit of spice. And it really does just knock it on its head. So it is locally made here in Torquay, Victoria, in small batches from a really ancient gypsy recipe. And we are absolutely mad for it. So if you also need a bit of a boost this winter that you can take that is delicious, digestive and immune boosting, then please jump on to hillbilby, HILBILBY.com.au and check them out. You can also use a special promo code for our tribe, which is Nourish, NOURISH 10, in order to get 10% off your order, just to give it a go. Bridget and I use it. It's on our counter all the time. So head on over to hillbilby.com.au/discount/nourish 10 to get your 10% off and start loving on some Fire Tonic.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is when you choose a partner who is just like one or both of your parents.
Juicy.
I know. We've got some really exciting points. I can feel a rise of energy as we think about this topic, which comes from a really beautiful listener's question. And we love listeners' questions because we feel it's so much easier to take the conversation where you want to go. So I'm really excited to do this with you, Bridge. Before I do, I'd love to remind you to jump onto nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe, where once a week we send you a wrap-up email with links to everything that we've put out in the world, and you can pick and choose where you'd love to dive a little deeper. And occasionally we send you a kind of more private conversation that Bridget and I would have between ourselves because we know you're really invested in the tribe. So nourishingthemother.com.au, join our tribe.
So this beautiful listener says, realizing that you have chosen a partner that is similar to one or both of your parents and being able to recognize the triggers and overcome them and evolve so that they no longer trigger you. I want to work out how I may be triggering him in ways that may be similar to one of his parents and help him to evolve.
There's so much in there.
So much in there.
So we're hoping to really step it out a bit. And if you would like any further, diving into any of the points we make, then please let us know through socials or email, and we would really love to make it as clear as mud or clearer still. So, Bridge, I want to start with, we are all choosing in some way or another a parent. Now, this does not mean I choose a man who looks like my dad. It's not that simple.
No.
It's either the passion that I grew up in, I'm so infatuated with that I will seek exactly that, or I'm so charged and upset by that I will choose its opposite. And in which case, I will keep running into the thing I'm running from within that dynamic until I love that dynamic.
Or also, I'm still so resentful of it that I haven't moved beyond it and I haven't lifted my own deserve level for more, that I will also be choosing that. So in various ways, we choose what is going to continue to help us evolve, and likely what's been laid down for us in early childhood by our parents is the pattern that we're going to be in to continue to work through.
Right.
So we're always choosing on some level aspects of what our parents gave us.
Which is why we're so big on work your shit out now, because the soup your children grow up in literally impacts the relationships that they grow into as adults.
Yeah. So essentially we, whether we're conscious of it or not, are patterning our children's nervous systems, and in turn we have been patterned by our own parents. And because of the most profound patterning happens, in the first 3 years. I mean, 90% of brain development happens in the first 5 years.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So, yes, of course, the brain's neuroplastic and we can transform it, which is awesome. But our kind of blueprint is laid down in those early years. And so much of what we were bathing in is implicit memory. It's not memory we can retrieve because it's before brain development was at a point where you can recall memories, but it's held in our nervous system. And so we're going to seek or avoid things that are still emotionally charged for us from that time. And that is also why we find the early parenting years so profound for our own evolution and painful. And then you throw partnership dynamics in the mix and you're witnessing your own parents, your parenting kind of relationship. And so I love this question because it is so multifaceted.
I wonder that with implicit memory, when we get the chance, when we are ourselves in relationship or with young children, that, like we talk about with triggers, is we don't almost have to be able to consciously remember something to be able to almost take a step outside of the dynamic you find yourself in and go, wow, this is a replay. So I don't have to remember it consciously because it's literally playing out for me right now.
I do think that. And I think if we consider this idea of like consciousness, like is happening all of it at the same time, and there is not like linear time is very much our construct. And so I've been sitting with that too. Like when things come out of my mouth, when I'm in a trigger with my son and I'm like saying these things about how I feel, I'm thinking, okay, I'm expressing what he's feeling and he's also expressing what I was feeling at that same age. So he is bringing to me what's stored in my nervous system to be expressed and healed. So this is why this mother-child dynamic is so interlinked. Even I found myself really triggered by both my kids the other day, and I ran away and I said, I'm just so upset and angry and nobody cares, and then that just came straight out, like it wasn't even conscious. But I'm thinking, wow, that's how my my son is feeling, and I've been the one to give voice to that. Like because maybe he hasn't felt safe, so I've given voice to that, because in the dynamic everything needs to be expressed. We have that constant balance, interplay between expression and repression, and the same thing happens in the partnership.
It's pretty amazing. Like, I'm really getting that as you're saying that, is this concept that where there isn't a voice, that reflective person within that family dynamic gives it a voice. So you become your child's voice when you're in that kind of flow, and he becomes your inner child's voice, which is what your trigger is at that point in time anyway. That's like pretty amazing.
And I think it was also quite healing, because if he wasn't able to give feeling to what was going on, or give a name to the feeling, even though, yes, I wasn't sitting there going, yeah, I'm listening, I was still expressing it, and I was still giving it a label and giving it a movement, which on some level for him, he would be able to see that and go, okay, that's okay to do. Like, when you're feeling like that, it's okay to take yourself away and move out of those emotions and give them a voice. So I think that this is what I love about pulling that apart, because if we get stuck in the whole, conscious parenting book says do this, or, so expert says speak this way, it's still very limiting, because it's not looking at what is the dynamic here and what is needing to be expressed or repressed here, and how are you playing a role within that dynamic to express perhaps what's going on with the children that they can't give voice to. It's just, I just think we think we know so much, but we don't. Like, it's just a mystery.
Totally.
And I think being curious about that is really, really interesting.
Lights me up having this conversation with you.
Me too. It's fun.
What else have we got here? Triggers are our disowned parts. Do you want to give voice to that a little bit?
Yeah. So whatever we find hard to own about ourselves in terms of our behavior or our ideas, what we think about, who we are, whatever we're most unable to be comfortable with, we are going to see in our world. And we're going to have that button pushed for us to help us learn to love that part of ourselves. And those buttons get pushed for us the most by the people that we love the most, because we will always love our children no matter what they do. So our children tend to push the button the most, and our intimate partner similarly, because they are the most, they're the mirror, they're the reflection that's closest to us. They see all parts of us, and so therefore we see all parts of ourselves in them. And relationship gets difficult when you try to make whatever you see in them as not you. You're making it outside of you, so all about them.
I find this so interesting when we're talking about, which you and I are really big on, monogamous long-term relationships being people-growing machines, as opposed to this concept of peace and love and happily ever after. Yeah. It's this concept of, stretch what love is, because love is being so intimate with someone that you learn and grow and evolve who you are through the experience of them. So
through the vehicle of a relationship, you get to grow yourself.
Right. So I find this so interesting, because we have this, egoic, if you like, idea or identity about who we are and who we think we are. And when we see that reflected in a partner in bits that we don't like, we go, ooh, I don't like that reflection. But our partners know us better than we know ourselves and see more of us than we see in ourselves. And we just often don't like that reflection.
And so we have excuses, we're growing apart, or we're not in alignment anymore, or he's not growing like I am, or we have different interests, all of those things. And yes, they might be symptoms of challenges in a relationship, but that's too simplistic to look at what the relationship is calling you into, because there is enormous richness there that's telling you about who you are and where your areas of growth are. I mean, you and I have had conversations over the years about how, our husbands aren't interested in any of the stuff that we're interested in. Yeah. And we used to really struggle with that. Yeah. But we can see now how damn perfect that is, because if they were, then one of us wouldn't be needed. The complementary opposite is what creates the the polarity that's needed in a relationship to help each person grow. And it also creates a sense of magnetism because there is so much mystery, because there is so much that we still don't know about each other, which means there's so much promise of discovery when we're willing to go to those places.
I also find it so fascinating that we can have all of these concepts about who they are, but that's so based on who we are and where we're at in that evolution.
Yeah.
Because you and I both know, we think about our relationship. I mean, I've been with my husband for 17 years now, and I think about who I thought he was 17 years ago. Well, that was vastly different to who I thought he was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's vastly different to who I thought he was 5 years ago, which is also vastly different to who I think he is today.
Yeah.
So he isn't anything because as I grow, my awareness shifts, my perceptions change. As I integrate more of myself, I can see more in him. And what I thought was missing was always there. I just couldn't see it because of the evolution I was in.
Yeah.
So even when we're talking about this consciousness thing and, oh, he'd never and he won't and, well, he is and he does and will now.
And I think there's also an enormous wanker factor around this idea of conscious living and consciousness.
I love that's so true.
because what the fuck is that anyway? Because consciousness is all things.
It is. That's exactly right.
It is every value. And for everything that you value, the universe is designed in such a way that there's someone in the world with a complete opposite set of values to you. And they're not wrong for that. And we're not right for ours. So everything is consciousness. Every body is consciousness. So if we, internalize the societal judgments around, football or blokey talk as being like unevolved or like lower, awareness, that's just taking on board the ideas of the time. It's not true.
Yeah.
They're still consciousness just as much as, like the accepted definition of conscious living, which might be crystals and meditation and conscious questioning, which is more where we sit. But we are no more consciousness than they are.
No.
And I think it's really important to continually come back to a place of humility around that because there is way too much shit out there that it's almost like spiritual nuffy land, which which
I so know, but I just am loving your lingo at the moment.
Which says like get rid of the toxic people and like I need to get myself away from that energy and that is you. Everything is you.
Yeah.
Everything.
Because that is consciousness.
Because
there's no separation.
There is none.
Yeah.
And the more that you want to get away from negative energy, the more that shit's going to chase you because that's part of you. Like we are all things. Totally. And our relationship is calling us to get comfortable with all things.
Totally. Sing it, sister. So back on triggers, a few questions I had written down here. So is when you are realizing that you are triggered by your partner, then we say to you, take a breath, kind of breathe it in and up your body and get clear on what it is that you are triggered by and what the feeling is in your body. And then we would say to you, think about the feeling. Think about how your body feels in that trigger. Where in your lifetime have you felt that before? Because your body remembers, your nervous system repatterns until you're able to heal it enough that you can love why it's there and you no longer need to be triggered by it. So where in your life have you felt this before? And when you get clear on those exact memories, they can't be vague. Oh, yeah, I kind of felt like that with my mum at different times or whatever. No, specific memories. Where do you specifically remember feeling this way?
And you need to go to, so say, if it was a certain year or you're a certain age, put yourself in that environment, like put yourself in the room, try to see everything around you so that you're really grounding yourself in that space and time. Because when you can be with that, you can then open your awareness up to see more, which is then when you begin to balance the emotional charge that's there, because the emotional charge that's there is there as a result of perceiving only one side of
An event. Yes.
But there were
because
always,
we can in that moment only perceive
exactly.
one. Yeah.
But there were always two sides there, but we can only perceive one. So when you become present to the moment, you can then look at, where was the opposite happening? Where was I actually feeling the opposite to this? Who was supporting me when I was feeling really challenged by my mother or my father? Because we choose partners to help us heal what is unhealed in our psyche and our nervous system. So if we have a story around, like perhaps, one of my ones is that my dad was like, emotionally disconnected. So if I still have a pain around that, I will continually face that in my husband as a way
and see his disconnection.
And see the disconnection. I won't see
the connection.
Because I'm hooked and continually stuck in a story that needs to play out until it smacks me in the face enough for me to wake up to the balance to that. And I love that. And I think it's interesting, another one for me is my husband doesn't doesn't have the patience or presence all the time with, our daughter's annoying toddler stuff, And I noticed as soon as I come back last weekend from this, personal development thing I was doing, and I noticed that I was picking up on that. So I was like, okay, where's he doing the opposite? And for the next half of the conversation, he was totally loving on her. And I thought that's exactly right, because he is both supporting and challenging her, both admiring her and resenting her, because we all do that with everybody, because all of us as humans have traits that are great and not so great, or that we like and despise, or that we wish we could expand more of and wish we could hide. And that's what makes us whole. And the more that we see only one side, the more we're breeding its opposite so that we can appreciate the whole. And our relationships are the best vehicles to get us to do that.
Oh, man, painful.
Yeah, painful as fuck.
When it comes to our sexuality, we want to look at the beliefs and the meanings that we've picked up as much as the ones that we've made up about our experiences.
In our Loathing to Loving program, we look at relationships to our family, partner, children, and feminine self, and spend a module in Nourish and Nurture, deeply expanding that feminine wisdom. Our Sensuality and Sexuality course is the next dive, exclusive to those who've taken part in the Loathing to Loving program.
The reason for that is the theory and the tools that you gain from Loathing to Loving underpin the knowledge of the psychosexual story that we build upon in our Sensual Sexual Deep Dive. For $289, you can join us in our exclusive Sensuality Sexuality course, or 3 payments of $97. We really want to walk you through loving your sexuality more than your sex life.
To find out more and join us, go to nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs.
So we're asking you to go back to those memories, look at where its opposite was, where the support was when you were feeling immense challenge, and think outside the box. Then we want you to also ask, where are you to an equal degree also the trait that you are judging in your partner? Where do you display whatever it is, selfishness, disconnection, laziness, and not specifically, it might not be in the home. So you might have home and family as a top value and he doesn't. So he's going to show up pretty lazy or disconnected there because it's not a top value for him.
It'll also be where he's probably in more chaos, more disorganisation, less able to get moving, needs to be told.
Yes.
So where is he all the opposite of those things?
And there will be in his top values where likely you will find your chaos. But we don't like to see and own our own chaos.
Yeah, it's true.
But we can spot it in our partner because no one knows us better than our partner, right?
Yeah.
And we just don't like that reflection. So really start to stack the evidence, almost like stacking Lego blocks. If you've stacked up a tower that this is how selfish or self-absorbed or whatever they are, start stacking your Lego blocks of moments in your life until it is equal and you realise you are the same. All right, next one. You can't evolve other people.
I love this one.
Go, Bridgie.
Well, because when we think that we're more evolved and that someone else is not growing, it is the biggest fantasy and such a projection. because it's saying that my set of values is like more important or somehow more enlightened than yours. Therefore, I'm growing more than you, and you're stagnating, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and you're not, and you're not, and you're not. And it's part of a bigger story that we're building about our partner, which isn't true. It's judging them through the lens of what we really value and making what they value not as important. It's not essentially caring about, you know, who they are, essentially.
You're out of love if you're there. Because the world is not as you see it.
Yeah. And no one else is as committed to you are as what you truly value. And I think that there's a hell of a lot of fantasy sold around relationships where someone needs to care about you and lift you up in all of these ways, you know, and disown parts of themselves to make you happy. And that is such a ridiculous notion. But I think that that's where a lot of relationships, you know, really have a hard time because they get sucked into that fantasy.
I so agree with that. And I even think about this with parenting. So this is also how sometimes we're parented is, you know, and Esther Perel talks beautifully about that in terms of attachment, right? So you have this, they're babies and they're right on you. And then at some point they walk away from you in a perimeter, right? And there's three types of responses to that. The child who leaves mum's lap and looks back to check in as they do before they venture a bit further out of their zone, looks back, and how that mother responds, ultimately, if you take this out in their life, is essentially what's imprinted there. So is mum anxious and says, no, it's not safe, come back, don't do that, not without me, in which case, as is the case with Esther talking about this role of desire, is, oh, okay, so to be loved, I must give up this piece of adventure, this piece of myself, this seeking of my soul's quest. I must give that piece up in order to be loved by you. So I'm willing to do that because we are so hardwired to belong. And so
particularly then it's about survival, right?
Yes, it is.
So to not do that means you're potentially not going to survive.
Right. This is why we're so hardwired to belong. So I will give up these pieces of myself in order to be loved by you. And over the course of my life, I've given up a piece here and a piece there. And you think about relationships, it's the same thing. Oh, okay, well, I'll give up this piece and I'll give up this piece and I'll give up this piece until I don't know who I am and I'm some shade of grey and I have no desire. There's nothing between us because you need like support and challenge. You need an equal amount of connection and disconnection, an equal amount of security and adventure in order to have desire. Enough of me that I can be a unit in and of myself and enough where we are connected just to be kind of glued in the middle. Think about those two circles that overlap.
Yeah.
But I need to hold on to the me in order for desire to be there. But if I give up and I morph into you, well, we know, Bridget, if there's two of the same, someone's not needed.
And it also, that's a classic, you know, way to repel. I mean, even
well, that's right. Someone's not needed.
Magnets show that.
Yes, right.
The way magnets behave.
And we talk about this with the feminine and the masculine is regardless of same-sex or opposite-sex relationships, it doesn't matter. We're talking about the polarities of feminine and masculine in order to have the charge of desire, which is all this is. Ultimately, we're talking about and going around in circles about different forms of that. As you were saying, Bridge, you need a positive and a negative pole. Like an arc of electricity forms in a battery or anything that has that spark of electricity, you need an equal counterbalancing pole of negative and positive. You need a counterbalancing pole of two traits in order to create a spark of electricity which unites a unit and creates the electricity of desire. So unless you're able to balance those poles, the more same you become, the more you slide into the middle, well, that's how you lose the spark. You want the spark, you've got to be willing to move yourself outside of that comfort zone of dependency, of sameness, of giving up of self, of pieces of shedding in order to be what you perceive is to be liked or loved. It's such a self-growth process in order to be able to sit on those poles and sit safely and realize that spark is still there, you know?
I love it.
Oh, I love it. So excited.
I love listening to you.
Gets me so excited. I love it because, and this is, energy is infinite when you're in your top values, right, Bridge?
Yeah.
You and I here are like just zinging in our bodies because we're totally in our top values.
Totally.
Family, relationship, consciousness, it just gets us going, doesn't it?
It really does. It does.
So you can't evolve other people. Thinking that you're more evolved and that they're not is just a really big fantasy, and ultimately you're headed for a nightmare. So when we're building up a fantasy, we're unconscious to the nightmare that's building underneath. But at some point, we will run into that nightmare.
Face it. Yeah.
So as you change, they will also change in response. Now, this is a really interesting one because we are in dynamic. We are in relationship dynamic to each other, like we're talking about these poles, and we are in a family dynamic as well. And I find you and I love talking about dynamics. We find it so fascinating because not only are we in dynamic, but as a whole unit in the family, we need as a unit to express all parts to be whole. And so I just love that this is the whole point of working on yourself, is because you don't need to work on someone else. You don't need them to do X, Y, and Z in order for them to grow and change. We're all growing and changing, whether we consciously choose it or not. But if you consciously choose it, you can manifest it in such a way where there's less pain because you're not sideswiped by it.
Yeah.
You're choosing or stepping into the areas of growth and pain, and you can do that work faster. So you can move through layers of self-evolution faster if you're doing it consciously. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So as you change, they change in response. And as we talked about before, the more you make safe of you, the more you see in them because your perception changes. You even think about life events when we're talking about perception. And the way that you viewed something, let's talk about, I don't know, sleep or kids at restaurants. You think about how you used to view that before you had kids and the thoughts, the beliefs, like we're all the best hypothetical parents, right?
Yeah.
Because you had a particular filter, a particular perception on that. And then you went through it and you gained more wisdom, you evolved and you changed, you shattered some beliefs. And guess what? You see more in your world. So now when you're thinking and looking at sleep and other parents and how they do it and kids at restaurants, you're viewing that completely differently. So this is the concept of when we change, we see things differently because our perception changes because we see things through a different lens. And our relationship is the same. The way that we see this person changes the more that we're willing to change and work on ourselves.
And the more that we're willing to really sit with the things that challenge us the most in them and look at where we do the same.
Yes.
To really own it. Because that is when you just shift out of resentment and judgment and into like bow at their feet appreciation because you see that they're just helping you to grow. And that's fucking hard sometimes. Like especially if it's something that you're really struggling to see is your own. Like someone that I was doing, this kind of work alongside years ago was super struggling with the label of narcissist that she had projected onto a partner. And I could see her visibly, like couldn't even be in her body even with this idea that she might also be that thing that she's judging. Because if we've built up such a big story and such a big identity of based on who we are in relationship to who we think they are, then that also becomes like a survival thing to not let go of that. Because if everything that we've ever thought is based on someone being a certain way or something being wrong in a person, and we're now going, well, we're also that. That can be incredibly destabilizing. And that's also why we want to run from it because, there's part of us, our animal psychology wants to kind of run away from that perceived predator who is asking us to grow beyond who we are, which our intuition is guiding us to anyway, and which we're going to get to anyway, whether we intentionally do it or not. And because it is, a perception, pain is a perception, that is such a great way to look at it and reframe it and go, oh, that's painful because there's something there for me. That hurts because that's seeking me to go into and find its wisdom. And I really love when we can look at it and go, oh, yeah, I see that.
It's making friends with pain rather than making it the enemy.
I mean, we talk about this idea of parenting as a portal to consciousness. So is relationship. All relationship is. And ultimately, how far we get in life, it comes down so much to the art of communication, and we practice and learn and integrate and expand the art of communication through how well we relate to others. And so if we really bring it in our relationships and lean into them, we gain life mastery beyond simply the family dynamic because we take what we learn into the world and we turn that into service and we teach our kids how to as well, which is why you and I are so big on communication, because we see that that is the thing like that we give our kids.
It's the glue for everything. It wouldn't matter what area of life you're talking about. Communication. Well, I mean, look, it's totally my perception though, because it's a high value of mine. Yeah. But I do see it as such a foundation to flourishing in every other area of life. If you can really be clear on how you're feeling and how you're relating and how you can communicate with another, it's very powerful.
It is.
So you are never done knowing yourself, and therefore you are never done knowing this person that you are intimate with, that perhaps you've already decided in your own story is they're boring, I'm boring, I already know this person inside and out, it's done, it's over, there's nothing here. You don't know yourself.
Yeah.
And you are such a vast mystery. And when you really feel into that, you realize this person that you have spent so many years with is still a vast mystery. And that does not leave a relationship. Desire and spark does not leave a relationship. But you have to be willing to move beyond your stories, gain some mastery over how to flip your perceptions and bust your stories, and how to sit in different relation to your relationship. So how to move on a pole, how to channel the energies of which you're wanting your partner to respond to. And it is entirely possible. So this is why we love monogamous long-term relationship as the gateway to self.
And I think that the values piece can't be underestimated either, because I don't know that we're always conscious of it, but if we feel like our partner is not hearing or listening or valuing what our values are or respecting them on some level, that also causes us to close down, because we open up to the people who we think support our values and we close down to the people who we think challenge them. And if we've got a story on our partner challenging them and not seeing how they challenge them as being a gift to us to help us get more in our power, then we will look outside of ourselves and outside of the family for more support. And that is what then breeds infatuation. That is what then breeds, affairs, all of those things, because we start to see that we're not getting what we think we need in the relationship. And so we go looking for it, not recognizing that love and our husband or partner loving us is also challenging us in those values, because that is also how we get congruent
and how we grow.
Yeah.
How we gain wisdom in those values.
So lots to ponder from this podcast.
Yes. And our sensuality, sexuality kicks off on Monday. So we would really love you to join us. So nourishingthemother.com.au/online program, sensuality, sexuality is where you can find out a little more. We're only doing this course once a year, so we only open up the doors once a year to really have incredibly conscious conversations about our sexual selves and how that's playing out in our relationship. Because, Bridges, you and I know if we don't have an accountability buddy almost to that, it's easy just for it to get too hard or to fall by the wayside. And yet it is so integral, our sexual selves, to how we feel and empower ourselves in every area of life, and certainly how we feel connected or disconnected within our relationship.
And how we feel embodied.
Yes.
And how we sense our world, because our sexual selves is where we ground ourselves in our power and in our greatest source of energy. So
that's why we're doing it. So we would really love you to jump in with us once a year to really dedicate some time to working on this aspect of yourself and your relationship. And we love your emails and we adore your responses, and we just really love that we have this beautiful tribe of women connected to to us and to, you know, just this path that we're trying to work out as we go. So we're so grateful that you listen and that you communicate with us through the socials and through the emails. And
we do. We love it.
it is really cool. So nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. And to connect with you, Bridgie,
It's suburbansandcastles.com, and you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com.
and remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.